start. So, welcome everyone to my session about Frontend Components. Today we will talk about reusability, flexibility and maintainability and how to balance in between. First of all, let me to quickly introduce myself. My name is Anton. I'm working as a managing director of a development agency. We work with Drupal, Python, a lot of front-end stuff, and also we are specialized in pattern lab, fractal, and other style guide and pattern libraries. That's why Frontend Components architecture is essential for us. And today I'm going to share some real experience from the past. Also from February, I'm director of a digital agency, which is specialized in marketing stuff and e-commerce websites and so on. And Frontend Components is very important for such kind of websites. So it's also a good case to show. So let's back to the session. First of all, I should say two stories. First, this session is not about JavaScript components. So we will focus mainly on reusable patterns, so to speak. I will explain later what does it mean exactly. But for now, important thing to know that it's not about Angular, React, Vue.js. So it's more about organization of components itself. It's more about pattern libraries and stuff like that. And it's not about Drupal. So it's about front-end components, how to organize them, how to split them, how to reuse them between projects. Doesn't matter is it Drupal or another framework. So we'll talk today mostly about front-end stuff and about how to reuse and maintain those components. But we will talk about Drupal also, how to use this together with Drupal. So, before we start, let me to quickly give some guidelines. So what is it best to use? What is the best use cases could be for these techniques? So as I said, it's not about JavaScript, it's not about web applications, so to speak. It's more about components organization on the backend side. So this is a good case for content management systems and frameworks like Drupal, WordPress, and other frameworks. Also for any server-side applications written in PHP, Python, or any other language, doesn't matter, since we talk about front-end. Also static site generators and component libraries or style guides. So any kind of this use case is our case today. And first of all, let's look at several examples. I'm going to show you a real example from the website we built last year. This is a rab.ch. This is a construction website in Switzerland. And let me to quickly introduce the company and its business. So RAB is responsible for building constructions like architecture, roads, large buildings, everything. And we have a lot of departments in the companies, like thousands of people, hundreds of projects, and around 10 sub-departments. So the website for this company is really huge, and the information on this website is quite spread and well structured. So we can see here how we can follow the same components in the different applications, like carousel. Here on the home page you can see one type of carousel, and then you can see slightly different carousel in the same project. So it's still carousel. You see here, you can slide through the pictures. You can see navigation on the bottom. But comparing to previous one, here you see animated progress bar. Let me to show you probably a real website. Yeah. So this is how it looks like. This is the homepage of this website. Here you can see a carousel. It's animated. It's slightly customized, like colors, padding, stuff like that. And here on the same page, you can see another carousel on the bottom for stories. So it's almost the same one. So more or less the same sizing, paddings, but still it's different. There is no animation on the bottom, and you can see explicit navigation buttons here, and it's slightly differently customized and styled. So we have two carousels on one page in one project, and we're slightly different. Also, there is one more carousel in this project used for photos on the page. So if you click on the photo, it will show up a light box, and you can slide through the media files inside, but also you can slide right here on the page. So this is one more carousel, and as you can see, the navigation is quite different from what we saw previously. So in total, we have 3 carousels, even in these 3 simple cases. It's more or less the same behavior, but completely different styling. Here we also have a gallery in the lightbox, so it's more complicated than previous 2. And also, all of them have different stylings. So this is our case we want to solve. We want to know how we can reuse the code, how we can save our time for maintenance and for implementing, but still to be able to manage all this flexibility, so to change styles, to change behavior, and stuff like that. To attach this lightbox here. Yeah, by the way, lightbox looks like this. So here we have like carousel of several pictures. If here will be more than 4, you will see this arrow navigation. And if you click on the picture, you will see this lightbox. So this is kind of things we are going to talk today, and I will show some techniques which will help you to build stuff like that really easy, and then to maintain and share between projects. So let's back to the slides. Typical way to implement these 3 carousels in one project is to pick some nice JavaScript library, for example, all carousel or slick slider or whatever you want, and then to write like 3 components for each carousel, write some additional JavaScript logic or configuration for those carousels, and then to integrate those carousels into Drupal website. So this is how it's typically done, and we did like this many times. But there is another way. It's not that big different, but it will give you some advantages. Here I'm talking about data attributes. So many of libraries, front-end libraries, support data attributes, so you can control behavior and configuration of the component without actually writing JavaScript logic. You can define everything right in line, the template, using data attributes. So let's try to use data attributes instead of writing custom JavaScript logic. So this is more or less like Drupal configuration. We can configure Drupal system, and then we can export configuration, and now it's not in the database, it's like our code. And here it's more or less the same, so let's use data attributes as configuration. And here is what I mean. Let's say we have 2 carousels, like in these examples, and here we have data carousel attribute, which will hold options of this fancy carousel library. And here, as you can see, we can change configurations. So, for example, we can turn looping on and off, we can show navigation and hide it, and so on and so on. And as you can see, the whole stuff is done in HTML. It's not even TWIG yet, it's just HTML. So we can define different behaviors, we can control look and feel of the carousel without writing JavaScript, without writing backend logic, without touching even TWIG. It's just HTML for now. So this way allows us to do the following. Instead of creating each carousel one over and over again, we can build some component once and then control its behavior via data attributes as a configuration. So instead of writing JavaScript logic 3 times, instead of integrating these 3 components 3 times, we can integrate it once, and then we can just change configuration of this component. And in this way you can produce not only 3 carousels, 4, 5, 6, 7, it doesn't matter. Since every instance of carousel, every piece of markup, it's a new carousel. So it's totally up to you. So you have freedom now to control it on the front end. So in general, data attributes give us an ability to control and change HTML structure. Since it's just HTML, we can change it, we can put another HTML inside, doesn't matter. We can nest and mix components together, since it's just HTML again, and data attributes attached to the component You can just put, for example, one slider inside another slider, or you can put more advanced component like gallery, for example, inside slider, and each component will work independently, since it's just HTML structures and attached data attributes. It's nothing else. And more important for us here, we can configure components in a very declarative way. So you don't need any backend knowledge, any frontend knowledge. It's just HTML. Even designer can do that, right? So this was the first thing. Second thing is to start using template engine to integrate data and configuration. So not to just write HTML over and over again, but use the template engine to save time and have more flexibility. And here is what I mean. Let's back again to this example of carousel. Here, instead of writing and hard coding options in HTML, we can just render it using TWIG, for example, using JSON and code function. And then instead of defining all items in carousel, we can loop and iterate through some array of items and then just render each item. And finally, we can include this component whenever we want, just using include tag like this. So now we have not just carousel, we have carousel which we can reuse like that. And just imagine, since items here is a variable, for example, we can include this structure in our Drupal template and pass here a multi-value image field, for example. And this construction will render it as a carousel. It's just one line of code. And here you can control, for example, how many pictures you want per slide. So you can render one field showing 4 pictures per slide, and then you can render another field on the same page. For example, for showing 2 pictures per slide. And so on and so on. So it's very flexible and it's very simple. So again, this very declarative and straightforward code, and it can be written by front-end designer, but even by designer. So this way allows us to integrate data in config to reuse our components via include tags. We can iterate over the items, and we can reformat data structures in the way we want. And of course, we can build compound components. So we can include, as I said, for example, gallery inside carousel and vice versa. So before we will continue, let's look at the examples. So let's start from the carousel. Let's quickly look at the code. Is it visible enough? So here is an example of a component built in this way. We have a folder. Here the name is atomic slider or just slider. It's the whole folder. It's a regular yarn package. Here we define just a name, version, and so on, and also dependency like all carousel. In this example, we will use all carousel. And then we have several files for this component. First of all, we have a TWIG file. It's very simple basically. Here we just have a container. Inside container we are iterating over the items and just rendering each item. So nothing else, almost the same what I showed you in the slides. And here, as you can see, in data slider we have these options. So you can control these options from the outside. We have a simple JavaScript which will just initialize it. No magic here. It will just search for all sliders on the page and try to initialize them. We have configuration. This is a special file for Fractal component library. It provides default demo data to show what component is. And then we have a CSS file, which is basically including original styles from all carousel and doing some animation here. And here is how it looks like. So we have this atomic slider component, and this is how it looks like with demo data. You can slide over, you can basically see default configuration of all carousel. So this is pretty simple. It's just, again, TWIG file, JavaScript if needed, and styles, as usual. The trick here, we are using data attributes to pass options to this component, and we are separating this component in a separate folder so we can then later reuse it in various projects. Let's look at gallery component now. So basically it's the same. It's a separate component responsible for showing Lightbox gallery of images or videos. It's built on top of Blueimp gallery. And here we have again a TWIG file, which will just include several TWIG files also. One is a static HTML, Lightbox copy-pasted from Blueimp gallery documentation. A preview is a special one, but what it does, it just shows an image of video or large image, like a preview, and wrapping it in a hyperlink, which will lead to the original of this file. So this is just actually a link to the large version of media file, and preview inside, that's it. And JavaScript, here it's nothing, because this library gives us all functionality we want. And as the styles, again, we're just including original styles and doing some basic customization to show, for example, play button and so on. And so here is how it looks like. We see like a previews of our media files, and when you click on the preview, you will see a Lightbox with all those medias inside. So we have two components, right? We have basic carousel built on top of all carousel. We have gallery component built on top of Blueimp gallery library. We can now include those two components in our Drupal templates to render, for example, multi-value image fields as a gallery or as a slider, or we can include in views, for example, to render views items as a carousel, and so on and so on. So already at this point, it's pretty flexible, so we can manipulate carousels, we can change configuration without writing any backend or frontend logic. It's just TWIG template, and all configuration is basically just variable inside TWIG template. So what we can do now, we can try to combine them together. So we have gallery, which will show us a Lightbox. We have carousel, which will show us a slider with images. So why not to put one inside another? For example, we want a slider of images, and when you click on the image, we want to show you Lightbox, all right? So let's try to build this. So basically, it's the same thing as we did. It's just a TWIG file. Here we have gallery object with items, which will contain our media files basically, and we are just iterating over these items and constructing an array of items. Each item will contain this preview included right from gallery component. So basically it's very simple code, we're just iterating and including a preview template from gallery. And when we are passing this array of rendered items to another component, to atomic slider, here. So as you can see, these items, which are just rendered, are now passed to the slider or carousel component. And here we are defining like we want to see 3 items per slide. And finally, we just including Lightbox static markup, so the Lightbox will work on this page. And basically that's it. It's just 20 lines of code. It's very straightforward and simple code, just one cycle and several includes, that's it. It can be done by any front-end developer without that much knowledge. And so what we get is like the following. We now have a new component, gallery slider. This is a TWIG file what we just saw. Here you can see we have 3 slides, 3 items per slide. And you can use basic functionality of carousel itself, but when you click on the image, you will see the Lightbox showing up. And everything works. So this is 2 libraries, one for gallery, one for slider. We just integrated them together. We provided data, everything is a separate component which are ready to be used anywhere. You could just include this gallery, slider, twig file anywhere you want, and it will work. And you can control everything in this component just using these options here and options of gallery itself. So as you can see, we just had two basic components, gallery and carousel, and now we can build like advanced components or compound components in a very easy way. And this is possible because of data attributes, which allow us to mix components together, TWIG engine, which allows us to reformat data and include one component inside another, and basically that's it. So let's finally try to build even more advanced component. I'll show you what we have. I call it events slider. Here's how it looks like. So basically all these examples are from real projects. And this is an example, was a request from client who said, or I want to show my events now differently. I want to have a carousel which will iterate over my events. And for each event, I want to show a gallery inside this slider. So you can click on the photos of this event and you will see a lightbox inside slider. And I want to show a date for each event. And I want to show a date near navigation for each event. And I want to see fancy background with a year related to this event. So basically it's quite complicated from the first impression. And typically how it's done, you are starting to search for library or writing from the scratch everything, or to use something for sliding, something for lightbox. But now we have gallery, now we have carousel, and we can control everything in TWIG. So let's try to reuse as much as possible. And here is again, we have a TWIG file. It's nothing more complicated than we saw already. It's 30 lines of code. And here again, we are just iterating over events object. For each event, we are deciding here how we are going to render it. So what we want to see on each slide. Here it's pretty simple. We will put the data in the special format on the top, when we will display a title of event, description of event, and we will include the gallery we just built for each event. So this is how our slide will look like. Date, title, description, and gallery. And here a special case on the top, but I will talk about it later. So at the end we have an array of items. Each item will contain a rendered event, basically, with gallery inside it. And then again we are just passing this rendered array to the carousel component. And here we have some options, like we want to see only one event per slide. We want to show navigation or dots on the bottom. And yeah, we just here providing additional CSS class so we can customize the styles. And finally, we again including lightbox markup here. And that's it. Basically, it's done. I only wrote a little bit of custom styles to render it nicely, like with background, light gray, year, and so on. But what you can do now, you can slide over the events. This is done by carousel we just built. You can click on the item inside slide, and it will show you the lightbox per event. So, and this is done by gallery we just built. So each event can contain its own gallery. And more important, not important, but more advanced, here on the bottom you can see a month of the event. And this is also completely done by all carousel. We just providing the information for all carousel to render this data. It's here. So here it's month, and here it's a year. So data.ATTRS, it's a special functionality of all carousel. It's all built in. Here you can provide some data for slide, which will be stored in the data attribute, but will not be rendered. So here we're like providing month and year. And then using CSS, we can style it like to position properly and to change the color and size. So as you can see, when I'm sliding the events, the year on the background is changing. And this is all done automatically without any code again. It's only styles. So what we did, we just took, again, gallery component, carousel component. We used TWIG to reformat and restructure the data and to build this compound component. And we wrote very simple styles just to render it like this. So basically, this pretty complicated and advanced component was quite easy to build using these techniques. And again, this can be done without any backend knowledge. It's just front-end stuff and very basic TWIG manipulations. So finally, now we have components built in this way. We can create compound components like we just saw. But now we want to reuse those components between projects. Because let's say we are working for a digital agency and we have, I don't know, 3 projects per month. And in each project, like we saw in this rep example, we can have 3 carousels, for example, right? So 3 projects, 3 carousels each, 9 carousels per month, 12 months a year. So it's around 100 carousels each year. And this is only about carousels. Again, the same with gallery, the same with accordions, and so on and so on. So actually, we're building over and over again the same functionality. We're trying to reuse libraries, but it's not enough. Since we need to have styles, we need to integrate into Drupal or our system. So we are building and writing code and maintaining all this stuff again and again. So let's see how it's possible to reuse these components without copy-pasting and without that much pain. There is a special feature in Yarn Package Manager. Everybody knows what is Yarn? Just asking. Okay, so Workspaces is a nice feature of Yarn Package Manager. Does anybody know what is it? Workspaces. So it's basically very simple. I will show you now, and it will allow us to reuse components and to change the code of these components with ease. So basically, this is how it works. In the root package JSON of our project. So here it's kind of package JSON of the whole our website. We can define a Workspaces array, which is basically just a list of folders. And for Yarn, these folders will be like dependencies of this project. But the difference is, if you will change the code in these folders, Yarn will detect everything automatically and will resolve dependencies. And this is cool for us because we can continue to work on these components and without reinstalling components over and over again. So this is kind of repository inside repository for Yarn. So you can work with it. That's why the name is Workspace. It's like your workspace, you can change the code, you can push changes, but you don't need to reinstall it. You don't need to increase versions. So Yarn will take care automatically. And this is really useful in combination with Git submodules. So you can build your component as a separate package. You can push it to separate repository. Then you can attach it to your project as a Git submodule. And you can define this Git submodule as a workspace for Yarn. And then you can change the code. You can do whatever you want. You can push changes to your component. And the whole project will continue to work without reinstalling this package. Because without that feature, what you need to do, you need to push change to the repository, to Yarn, basically. You need to update version, and you then need to reinstall this component to your project, to the latest version. And this is really pain if you work with separate projects and trying to share the same component. And Workspaces work really well here. And on the bottom you can see just a definition of this separate component. It's nothing special here, it's standard Yarn package. So this feature allows us to distribute our components as a shippable packages. And you can attach these components to your projects and continue to work on them. So, for example, if you build a carousel and you now use carousel in 10 projects, you can fix a bug, for example, in one project, push it to the repo, and then update 9 projects easily, and everything will be done automatically. And even if you will, for example, use one more library for your component as a dependency, it will be properly resolved in all projects by Yarn, and everything will be transparent and automated. Also, you can manage component dependencies because it's Yarn, so for each component you can define which libraries are you going to use. And again, all dependency resolutions will work automatically. And most important thing, thanks to Workspaces, you can maintain components right in place. So you can just change your code as you do right now in any of your Drupal styles or templates. You can push changes, and that's it. You don't need to reinstall, you don't need to, I don't know, use Yarn link or any crazy stuff. It will work transparently, just like this is a one folder. So as a summary, let's summarize up. I mentioned 3 tips, so let's try to use data attributes instead of writing custom JavaScript as a configuration, so we can reuse and stay flexible and declarative without that much pain. Let's use template engine to reformat data and to include our components, and also to provide configuration to those components. And finally, let's use Yarn Workspaces together with Git submodules to ship and reuse components between projects, but still to be able to maintain them without pain. And at the bottom you can see several examples of components we saw today. Carousel gallery examples contains this compound components, and first link contains a component library with all those components attached. Finally, I can show how it looks like. So this is basically the same what we already saw. The difference is this is a fractal component library, and this is a storybook component library with TWIG loader configured. And here the same components attached. So our carousel we already saw. It's the same component. It's not the same component. It's the same package actually. It's the same repository attached as a Git submodule to this project. Gallery, what we already saw, it's slightly bit different. Previous here, just titles. Gallery carousel, our compound component we built today. And event slider, the same compound component we already saw today. So, as I said, these are 2 different systems, like 2 different websites, even it could be Drupal or any other framework. Here it's a Fractal and Storybook. But still, we are able to reuse components between them attached as a Git submodules. Here you can see in the GitHub that this is a submodules, and you can see version here. And this is quite flexible, right? So we now can distribute, we can exchange, we can reuse between projects, we can reuse the same component in one project. And this is not only about carousel and gallery, right? You can build whatever you want for your needs and then to reuse between projects. So, thank you for your attention. And now, I'm open for questions, if anyone has. Yes, please.
Is there a particular reason why you used set instead of TWIG blocks to replace certain content inside?
Yeah, actually, set is used just as a. So let me to show the template. Probably it will be easier. Yes, you mean this construction?
Yes.
So here, what we want to do, we want to construct an array of rendered items. And this content will contain all this markup inside. So this is a way how you can provide a markup to the variable. So block is used differently. It's used to replace content in another template to define what you want to see in another template. And here we don't want to replace something in another template. We want to set markup to variable. So this is basically set. It's just different text for different purpose. Block is used when you want to have a generic template and when you want to include it and replace the content of block. And here we just want to set explicitly what we want to render here. In other languages it's called capture tag, to capture what's inside. Yes?
How do you make sure that the component works as expected on all the projects where it is used? I mean, after changing the component.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's more about architecture. So the idea here, when you are building these highly reusable components, not to try to do as much functionality as you can do, but try to keep it simple, try to keep it lightweight and project agnostic. So in this way, in this example, when we talk about, for example, carousel, it's just generic all carousel without any knowledge of any project. If you want to do customization in your project, do it in your project. So attach this component to your project, then create another component or write custom styles, but in project, not in this component. In this way, it will guarantee you that it will not break anything, since it's generic component. It's always the same. So we can customize it. We can add more features, but these features is best to be done like as a generic features. For example, I don't know. I want to have a different navigation, like to be able to use a scroll bar here instead of dots. This is a good feature to be added in generic component. But if I want to change colors or position or whatever I want, it's better to do in project, not in this component. So
you don't do some kind of, okay, we will test it on 3 random projects in an automated way. I don't know, but just because even with generic components, it's possible, maybe, that something will go wrong.
Yes, but it's about testing of the project. So in this way, it's just as yet another front-end library. So nothing special here. It's just JavaScript, CSS, that's it. Here, it's important how we organize it, how we use it, so we can reuse it heavily. So, but it's less about testing, it's nothing special here.
Thanks.
I have one about Yarn workspace, yes. You told that you can change something in one project and then it will be updated on another ones, yes. But the question is, for example, you still will need to go to each project and write yarn update this package to receive these updates?
No. So, yeah, good question. If you are making some changes in one project, how to pull these changes in another project? Of course, it will not be pulled automatically, otherwise it can break something. So you can at least test it. But you don't need to yarn install, as I said. This is a feature of Workspaces. You just need to update Git submodule, so Git submodule update. It will check out the latest version of submodule, and that's it. For Yarn, it will be transparent. For Yarn, Workspace means just look at this folder, take what's inside, don't care about versions. Resolve dependencies, and continue to work as usual. So yeah, just Git submodule update, and that's it. Yes, please?
So this way you use Yarn, but it doesn't take your components from an NPM repository or something. It speaks directly to your Git repositories. Right?
In this way, yes, but it depends on what you want to achieve. So if you trust the component, if you are sure that it's stable and you don't want to change it that much, you can install it as a Yarn dependency, as usual. But here, what we are trying to achieve, to be able to work on them, to be able to customize them, to fix bugs and to pull updates easily. And in this context, yes, it's not resolved as usual. But you can always switch. Yes?
I lost the first 5 minutes of the presentation. I really liked what I saw. I saw that you use Fractal and you work with TWIG. Was this a preference over Pattern Lab? Have you used Pattern Lab? And why did you choose Fractal, if you may?
Earlier on, there was only a PHP version of Pattern Lab. That's why it was quite complicated to be used by front-end developers, and Fractal from the beginning was Node.js library. That's why it was so easy to install for front-end developers. And that's why we chose Fractal. Now you can use whatever you want. There is also Pattern Lab Node.js official version, so you can pick this one. It will work the same way. And also Storybook, also pretty nice library. So actually it doesn't matter. It's just about what do you prefer. Everything will be more or less the same.
So you are using a Node.js Fractal workplace, let's say, but you are writing TWIG inside?
Yeah. So where is a JavaScript implementation of TWIG.js for Node.js server, so you can render TWIG templates on Node.js. And this is what I actually do here, right now, on my local machine, for Fractal library and for Storybook. So yeah, it's possible. And that's cool, because you don't need to install Composer for your front-end developers and stuff like that. It's just Node.js, Yarn, and that's it. So, thank you for attention. I think we are done. Have a good day.
Yeah.